probably should have grabbed my mouse before starting this video. There's a guy who helped me out named Mateo several times. Matter of fact, he ended up losing his vehicle for helping me. See, when I got out of jail and Brian Valenzuela had illegally stolen my evidence over a case that wasn't even in his jurisdiction, he didn't enter it in as evidence. He prevented me from having it as evidence. And not that it mattered. Pamela Cardi wasn't there to do her fucking job anyway. My first 7 court dates, Pamela Cardi didn't bother to show up fucking once. My first 7 court dates, she didn't even bother to talk to me. I had 9 court dates overall. 9 court dates in Arapahoe County. Although there were some black folks there who had yet to have a court date that had been there for 7 months or longer. There were also a couple of white people in there that had been in there for 7 months or longer. Those were people who pissed off the police. Bad. But they didn't have the benefit of, well, the publicity. I did. They had to do everything they could after how badly they fucked up. They had to do everything they could to try to paint a different picture than what was going on. Allowing me 7 court dates in 3 months. That's unheard of. Of course, they never fucking did anything. Anyway, when I got out of jail there, I was trying to get everything done right and legal. Get my evidence, get my vehicle, jump through all of their hoops, and continue to try to fight. The problem is that Pamela Cardi not telling the truth, not doing her job, robbed me of everything that I had. Meanwhile, I was tortured in the fucking jail, and there were a lot of witnesses to it. But all the cops got to do is turn off the volume, and it's their narrative versus yours. They have the badge and you don't. All of these officers who are my perpetrators played on that mentally ill tag. They got off on hurting me. Especially Lolatai and Macrae. Macrae and Thorne, when I tried to turn them in, they put me on suicide watch. Imagine that. Of course, I had to deal with a lot of people who were completely dishonest with me, like Mandy Hughes and her daughter. Maybe they told the truth. If they told the truth, then it means that the cops were lying. If the cops told the truth, it means that, well, Mandy Hughes and her daughter were lying. The fucked up shit that they pulled. Holy hell. One of my stalkers is sending me more messages. Lovely. I'm trying to get another friend's number. I think I still have his number, but it's been a few years. So I'm getting his number to send to my autism advocate. Hey, Mateo. Not too good. I just got out of 3 different jails in less than a month. All 3 of them are places where I was harmed and nobody was there for me. So I just had to take the abuse. I was assaulted 4 times.
Why were you in there?
All of this is over the situation with Natalie, dude.
Okay, so is it because you're pressing for other information?
No, sir. It's because they did all that stuff when Natalie died and like sending me, first of all, the assault by Whale and Lolatai. That was after over a week of hell from people assaulting me and also Boulder Police Department separating me from anybody who was trying to help me. And
okay, so as far as like giving you the ability to call others and stuff like that, or
well, I need people to speak up about the help that I was trying to get. I mean, like when you drove me to try to get that evidence from Brian Valenzuela. Do what?
Right out in Denver.
Yep, and your car broke down. Did you ever get it fixed, or did it just end up costing you?
Well, I mean, the tow was only like, I think it was like $180. I gave him a little bit of a tip because he drove me and then trucked you to where we dropped it off. But yeah, I mean, I probably spent like overall with like tools and hotel stay and all that stuff, along with the transmission because that's what went out. Transmission fuck up, and but it only cost me somewhere around like $1,000 overall with the hotel cost and the tools and another transmission. Wasn't too bad though, honestly. Like that was at the time when I got the statement or whatever from the bridge house. They had fired. Well, didn't fire me. I resigned. They're basically told me like, you either have to either we're going to fire you or you can resign. So I ended up resigning. And the whole reason for that was just the factor that I had a client that was at my hotel room, and obviously, like female, whatever. But I wasn't even in the hotel room. I was at work. She was there. As far as
Be a
like
good
the
person.
interest in the client, like that's fun. But I never made it like any kind of like. As far as her and I, we were pretty much just friends, and that was, you know, where her appearance was as far as our relationship. But then somebody that worked there at the Millennium Hotel was also a client at Bridge House and had inquisited about the person that was there that was staying in my room, and then he also had an inquisition to the staff that front desk, I guess, about who was in the room. And as far as that, they basically fucked up the client confidentiality thing, So if you have a client that's in a hotel room and unless it's something that's like, as far as like, the police looking for somebody, they are not allowed to give out names or what the person's or who the person's name is in the room, even if they're delivering said food to the room. And that being said, he got all pissy and decided to do this whole blackmail bullshit to me and cost me my job there. And then, but I didn't really do anything about it. I was pissed, really pissed. And basically, like, he had put out a restraining order on me. I'm guessing probably because of the fact that he knew that, he would think that I would be the kind of person to come after him,
I understand that. I get that a lot.
So, but I never did. I thought about it, but never did. And then, funny enough, People were like, aren't you going to do something about it? I'm like, yeah, no. I'm just going to let karma fucking deal with it because, karma kicks everybody in the ass. You do something fucked up, karma's going to fuck you up.
I used to believe that, but I've seen all of my predators get away with it, and I've been harmed repeatedly over it. Like, I think karma ended up sick or something.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen.
The thing is, like, the police wrote down a lot of bullshit that was not true, claiming that I wasn't trying to get help. A lot of my predators, they were able to get protection orders because the police did everything they could to prevent me from speaking in court, from showing evidence. They did everything that they could, up to and including assaulting me repeatedly to try to shut me up. They claimed that I wasn't trying to get help and that nobody wanted to or was willing to help me because of the way that I act. I'm like, you guys are writing whatever you want. You didn't listen to anything that I said. You didn't call any of the witnesses. You didn't bother. You assumed my guilt from the beginning, and you haven't let go of it. Like, that's the thing, is that at this point, I literally have to break the law because I have to beg people to come forward. And there's the problems of how expensive it is to try to get that help, especially long distance, especially when I have to travel somewhere where I'm unsafe because of the police in specific. Like, there isn't anybody in Boulder that is not aware of how evil the fucking cops are to the homeless.
I'm completely aware.
Yeah.
I've been working with them as long as you have.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you've been working with them longer, but, both of us been working with the homeless for a long time, dealt with cops forever.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand where your stance is there. And I definitely agree as far as that aspect of, treatment and like, the way that they tend to choose to have like this, I don't know what you would call it. It's basically like a almost like classist or something like that. But it's like,
well, we don't have the money for a real lawyer. That's one of the things I said. That's because we don't have the money for a real lawyer. That's one of the things that it was like a running joke at every police department. When I'd say, I need a police officer to investigate the crimes that you've committed, they'd say, oh, you can do that. You can get a lawyer when you get out. And they got a big old shit-eating grin on their face when they say it. And usually that's my sign that they're not going to let me out. They're going to ship me to a different jurisdiction so I can't speak out. They've done that repeatedly. Robbed me of my funds. Go ahead.
I don't know if this would help at all. I mean, this person, I'm sure you probably met, probably don't really have a high, don't really think highly of this person, but they might be able to at least help in some sort of way of giving directions. And I don't necessarily agree with them all the time either, but
is it Darren O'Connor?
No.
Okay.
So this person used to work for Bridge House and also Boho and all that stuff. He also ran Boho for a short amount of time.
White Horse?
And no. He was kind of a dick. No, he's a lawyer, so I'm guessing you would probably remember him in maybe a few interactions. He was kind of crass, a little rude sometimes, but I think he's at least got some kind of information to like help you lead you into a better direction, or at least give you some sort of not necessarily advice, but at least push you in the right direction of finding what you might need.
Well,
and that person is William Sweeney.
I think I don't know if it's his sister or his daughter, Lilia. I think she's friends with me on Facebook.
So, she Jewish? Because Bill Sweeney is Jewish.
I'm pretty sure she is, but I don't know for certain. She's definitely not practicing. But I know a lot of kids that grew up Jewish that are not practicing Jews.
I think I still have his number if you want me to give it to you.
You'll have to text it to me, because otherwise I'm not going to remember it. I don't have a pen handy.
Okay. Let me see if I even have your number. Just a second.
Probably not. The last time that we were talking, I had a different phone. It ended up getting stolen. It was full of evidence, which sucks for me.
Okay, so the one I have is 308-566-0439.
Nope, that's not it. The last three numbers. A lot of it is that the police were outright lying, literally the whole time, and anybody who tried to speak up, they refused to listen to. And then they claimed in court.
Just a second here.
Yes, sir.
So it's 308-566.
Yes, sir.
Contact. And these are my thoughts on, because I watched the videos that you sent me. As far as I'm guessing that was more of like what happened with you.
That was literally just January of 2018. That was just January of 2018. And that's not including a lot of the assaults, the threats. That's just the stuff that was on the news. And there's a lot of that. There's over 30 web sleuth groups that did things on Natalie. And every time that they do, I end up having people threatening to kill me out of nowhere. That's usually what tells me that somebody else made one.
Another video about it? Or what?
Yep. And a lot of them, like, the thing is, some of them at the very end of the video, they admit that it wasn't me and that Joseph Michael Lopez was the one that killed her. But a lot of these people don't have the ability to watch the whole video. You know, they'll watch 10 minutes of it and then they want to go do something. They want to harm the dude who must have done this to Natalie. And they get a hold of me and threaten to kill me and kill my family and so on and so forth. It's nicer than the people that were doing it in person, but it's still just as evil.
Agreed. So that kind of brings up a couple questions. First one is, was it even Natalie, or was it maybe her father that maybe didn't like you, or was it actually her that, put out a restraining order?
Well, she did get a restraining order, but that was because I used a message that she sent me in 2016 to expose her dad. I mean, by that point, I had been treated like a stalker and a rapist and a child molester and all sorts of shit. And that was before she died. I couldn't go to Boulder without being assaulted by one of her meth buddies, or rather one of Maddie Boa's meth customers.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, they stalked me for an entire year before she was killed. They drove me fucking crazy.
All right.
It's called gang stalking.
Then there's another part when I watched, actually I read this excerpt about exactly what you're talking about the Lopez guy. So I was reading through the whole thing. I watched, the newsreel or whatever. But there's something that I found as far as like the wording and whatnot that seems kind of fishy. And it seemed fishy because when I finished reading that, I actually pulled up her Facebook account, at least the one that she had, which there was only one thing that was coinciding as far as something that was said by Lopez. But it wasn't anything about actually looking for somebody to actually kill her. And that's what it said in the excerpt as far as Lopez saying that, she was looking for somebody to kill her or whatever the fuck. But as far as Facebook, it was kind of within the same clause, but it had nothing to do with actually, being killed or having any kind of like a negative connotation towards it. More or less like a connotation towards, getting away from drug habit and becoming a better person, really. But even if that, as far as like coming to the gates and being on the knees, that was the thing as far as the excerpt of Lopez, which seemed like it was like taken out of context from police, as far as the post that had nothing to do with it. But I guess, or at least that's what it seems like.
Well, that's the thing. Once they didn't find her killer until after I was released from Clearview, and the police had threatened and harassed a few friends of mine for trying to help already by that point. There's a lot of people, like you remember Sarah Rubiolo? Sarah Rubiolo?
Yeah, there's a lot of people I've seen throughout the years as far as like, come and go.
Yes, sir. That's the homeless society. It's constantly moving. She's not homeless anymore, though. I don't think she ever was, but she was one of the people that I went to for help trying to find Natalie after Natalie disappeared. The thing is that I was harmed for over a year before Natalie was killed. People were harming me. They were treating me like a child molester and a rapist, and Natalie never called me those things, ever. She said that I stalked her because she was embarrassed because her mom found her heroin, and I got my vehicle stuck outside of her house trying to explain what was going on while I was having a friggin' meltdown. And meanwhile, I was also having a medical emergency because that was on the 23rd of October of 2016. And I was dehydrated on my birthday, October 18th of 2016. So I'm already 5 days into being severely dehydrated by the time I got stuck outside of her house. Plus, I was having severe friggin' panic attacks. So I literally hadn't slept for 3 or 4 of those days at all. I was just scared. All of my support network that was supposed to be there when I got there, they were all gone. And Natalie and her sister kept on inviting me to go places, and I was going to those places. And Natalie's sister was asking me to, like, every time she went out for a cigarette break, she'd get a hold of me. Every time she went to lunch, she'd get a hold of me. She just wanted to hang out with me. So I spent a lot of time hanging out with Alicia, but not Natalie. Meanwhile, the whole reason that I made that trip, Natalie wasn't even going to go to Virginia unless I promised to go to Virginia to visit her. She wasn't even going to get on the fucking plane. So when she went to Virginia and she got a hold of me, I was already 2 months past when I was supposed to be there. And Maddie Boa was supposed to go with me. We had planned the trip together. But then she got busted selling meth and she couldn't go. But then I went to Virginia. I finally got there, and Natalie was excited about it, and Alicia was excited about it, and they invited me to Virginia Beach, and I went. And while we were at Virginia Beach, they invited me to, because I was staying behind I was staying at a Starbucks in Chesapeake, just off of Military Highway. Well, they lived on South Military Highway, which is like 14 miles away or something. And I had no clue where they lived. But then they asked me to stay behind where Alicia worked, which is a cricket store. And she said that her boyfriend worked in the same building at the Starbucks, so I would have a safe place. And it was pretty all right. But then there was a situation with Hurricane Matthew. And just before that, they had invited me to go to a pagoda in Norfolk. And when we went to the pagoda in Norfolk, I got to hear a lot about their dad and also their ex-stepmom, whose name is Shelly. She was on the phone with us for a good hour before we got to the pagoda. And then go ahead.
That was another like question that I kind of had as far as like I mean, I don't think that was that kind of goes along with like the report on Facebook. Two stories that are completely different as far as like mental status, but also don't rule out the factor that there may have been issues in the younger years, going towards getting into those kind of things. far as drug habit.
Yes, sir. Her dad got her into that. I can prove it. Matter of fact, if you message me your email address, because like I said, I don't have a pen handy. But if you message me your email address, I can send you the messages between me and Natalie. While she was pretending that I was stalking her, we were friends that whole time. We were friends. But she got embarrassed because her mom found her heroin. And then when I got my car stuck outside of her house, like, yeah, she was embarrassed.
Okay.
But I left Virginia, and that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. I didn't even make it out of Virginia before Matty Boa was getting a hold of me and calling me a creep. And by the time I got back to Boulder, Matty Boa had spread rumors through the whole town. Well, not through the whole town, mostly her meth customers. But I tried to get Natalie and Alicia to help me with that. Like, hey, people are harming me. I'm getting treated like a child molester, and I didn't do anything to you guys. You know, the worst thing that I did was get dehydrated and have a medical fucking emergency stuck in the middle of the road. That's a far cry from stalking. But I needed people to look at the evidence. And like when I went over to your house that one night when you hooked me up with the violin, and by the way, that violin ended up getting stolen by the police. They literally would not listen to anything that I had to say. They were too busy at that point with hiding their own wrongdoing. When Natalie's killer was found, people just assumed that everything was fine and that I would be fine. No, I was assaulted at Clearview and by Waylon Lolatai, and they weren't going to let that shit go. I was literally just assaulted in Larimer County Jail for the third time since Natalie was killed. All because they want to sell a narrative that's bullshit, and nobody came forward. Not one person came forward in court to speak the fuck up. Not one. For 3 years, I've been begging people to help, and they keep saying, well, you know Natalie's killer was found. Yeah, I'm not fucking retarded. I am aware that Natalie's killer was found. That doesn't stop people from harming me. That doesn't stop these police from trying to hide the crimes that they committed. And that's what this all comes down to.
So as far like this whole thing, that I understand. So what you're looking to do is basically like clear the record as far as like any kind of like
I need to show the truth so that the police will stop harming me and the courts will stop harming me. Now, the general public is probably always going to be harmful to me, but I can't go anywhere at all. I can't. Anywhere that I go, the police pull all this mentally ill bullshit on me. They treat me like I'm a fucking animal. They assault me over and over and over again, and they have done everything that they can to not address my safety concerns. They think that if they talk over me or yell over me, that it means that I didn't say anything. When in reality, they're doing that so that I can't turn them in. They can say, oh, well, I didn't hear him say that.
Right.
Plausible deniability.
Right.
Problem is, I recorded these situations, as many of them as I could. I can prove that these cops lied outright to me every fucking step of the way. From Scott DaCosta here in Chapel to all of the cops in Colorado. And people don't want to understand that, yeah, nobody stopped this harm. Clearview is now closed down for literally killing people doing the things that they did to me. I told on Clearview a whole year before Tony Kovaleski ever even began to investigate that stuff. And you know what it took? It took someone calling in and saying, hey, man, they're abusing people in there. And I tried to explain to every single person that I know, hey, I was abused in there. I'm not heard. They use the term mentally ill as an excuse not to hear me and to harm me repeatedly.
Right.
And I need somebody to speak up, but nobody did. And as a result of nobody speaking up, nobody taking the time to actually care enough to listen, yeah, they killed people. And we could have put a stop to it, but it was just me.
That was the whole thing that just happened recently with the BLM stuff.
A lot of dead people. The thing with Clearview is that anytime you try to turn in a police officer, especially if you're a homeless male, you have to have somebody go in with you. And nobody went in with me. You know, it wasn't until Molly Smith, who didn't know anything about the situation, finally went in with me in June or Yeah, the very end of June of 2018. And Molly Smith actually has a lot of evidence. Then there's Peaches, Kayla Trujillo, and she's got a bunch of evidence too. But we're on the outs because my predators, she listened to them, but she wouldn't listen to me. She promised to help me, but instead she ended up helping my predators and treating me like shit over it and outright lying multiple times. No, I'm not going to respect that. I can't respect that, especially after everything that I went through. For a whole year before Natalie died, I was going to Miss Peaches to try to get help. When Natalie was killed, that was right after Ken and Leah stole all my money and their roommate, Dawn Bird, assaulted me. I left. I went to Miss Peaches. That was the 26th of December of 2018 or 2017. And 2 days later, on the 28th, that's when Natalie disappeared. Now, Miss Peaches was finally, after a whole year of trying to get help, after a whole year of her basically treating me completely like shit because I was trying to get help, she finally was going to help me. And I got there, and she had to have back surgery, and me and Raj were up all night worried fucking shitless because, I mean, she's having surgery. And then when she got back,
what we were talking about was Peaches and Raj, because I know they live in Longmont. She was working at the Millennium Motel for security or whatever.
She was also working at the 16th Street Mall.
Yeah, 28th Street.
28th Street, you're right. Sorry, I was just recently in Denver, and in Denver they talk about 16th Street. So.
I get you. Yeah, and I even saw some of the stuff as far as like Facebook and whatnot. Honestly, like trying to. So.
She don't want to be my friend anymore. She won't talk to me, but she has evidence that I need. Miss Peaches has some USB drives that I need. They're full of evidence that I can't get a hold of anywhere else. The reason for that is because a lot of stuff was stolen from me in the last 3 years of trying to get the cops to do their jobs, being forced into homelessness. I mean, I've got records on my YouTube of my entire travels, including, people at bus stations with heroin needles hanging out of their arms and prostitutes. And like, this is all stuff that people wanted to pretend like I was imagining, but I recorded that shit. You can say that I'm schizophrenic all you want, but the fact is I'm showing the evidence. I need to be allowed to show it in court.
Right. I don't want to seem like a picking or anything like that, but I have a couple suggestions. I'm sure you probably already thought of them, but have you, until this gets figured out, this, as far as having to deal with people that do certain things, getting an account through something where you can, when you record on your phone, that recording doesn't just go to the phone, it goes to an online server, which then also gets put into an offline server.
Well, that's all electronic shit, and I've never been good at electronic shit. I had to go to Josh Hughes anytime I had a problem with my computer. Also, my phone.
As far as some of the websites, it's become a little bit more user friendly as far as being able to log in and pull up those videos. So as far as that, that's why I'm saying finding something that has an offline server so that it can't be tampered with, because anything online they can get a hold of, but if it's held offline, encrypted, then they can't get it, really. Unless they're really going to spend a shit ton of money on somebody trying to crack fucking impossible code.
As far as anything like that goes, my phones are full of evidence. I don't have the technical skills to get all of that stuff transferred over. I need help in person to do that. That's the thing. Anything electronic I need help with, and most of my evidence is electronic.
Okay, there's somebody that I know, and I'm not sure if you were around when he was around, but his name is Chuck Kissinger, and he's pretty heavy into figuring out, like, oh, he's like a gamer, fucking kind of computer nerd. I can talk to him and see if there's something you can do to, you know, you can talk to him and maybe you can assess what he can help you.
Well, it's a matter of being able to get there in person and do these things. If he can video text with me or video chat with me, and I can actually show him what I'm doing, that might help. I mean, it wouldn't be the same as in person, but I'd be able to see what he's doing if he wants to, do something on the computer and show me how to do it. And if I'm looking at my computer screen, I can hold it up so that he can see it.
Okay. Yeah, no, he's on Facebook, so he should have Messenger and be able to talk to you just like I am right now.
All right. When we get off the phone, I'll text you with all the information that I need you to send me via text. That way I actually have it. And I'll take a screenshot of it so it's archived. That way if something happens to my phone, I still have it.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that, like the stuff that Miss Peaches has, is extremely important. It shows a lot of the stuff between Natalie's ex-stepmothers and myself. They were in communication with me, pretending like they wanted to help, pretending like they actually cared, but it turned out that they were asking me not to say anything about them being in contact with me. But the problem is that they were doing shady shit, and I literally had to. I had to say, hey, I've been in contact with Natalie's stepmothers. This is what they've been saying. This is what they've been doing. But I was prevented from being able to speak out in court or show anything in court. There was a lady named Alyssa Rainwater who showed up to one of my court dates, and so they canceled my court date because somebody showed up. I mean, it's some fucked up shit. Also, her mother had sent me money so that I could use the phones. If I'd have been able to use those phones, I'd have been able to get a hold of Miss Peaches and other people that I needed help from. But without that money, I couldn't. And they say, oh, well, you have access to the phone. That's like saying I have access to a car when the car has no gas and there's no gas station for hundreds of miles. Like, okay, giving me the keys to that car and saying, all right, drive to town for me, that's not going to do any fucking good. There's no goddamn gas in it. And that's what's been happening. They keep pretending that I have these resources, and they keep robbing me of these resources. The police robbed me of these resources that I needed to take care of myself, and then claimed that I wasn't trying. Now, how many times did I go to you about the situation,
Yeah, times. But the things you were asking for, I had, like, the last one that I remember was you were asking about whatever the fuck his name is, whatever the fuck, Apodaca or some shit.
Oh, yeah, Thor, Derek Apodaca. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because he assaulted me.
He's tried to friend me on Facebook so many times. Like, I don't know. I knew him from when I was like 16, 17 years old, back when, like, Tigger and Aaron and all of them were hanging out and whatnot. But, over the years, it just kind of was like, yeah, I don't want
to. Yep. He assaulted me for Natalie's mother. Derek Apodaca literally went out of his way to assault me. And then her mother decided to be friends with the son of a bitch after finding out he assaulted me. I mean, the Bollinger family have pulled nothing but nonstop bullshit. I need to get protection orders against the entire Bollinger family. But that won't happen if I'm not allowed to show it.
I just thought about something. There are ways to get into the history of what was on your phone as far as like conversations between people, but you have to know what the number was and which company you were going through, because generally they have like a back source or whatever.
I've been through all that. I need a judge. That's literally what I need. They won't allow me any of that information without a judge. Also, 3 of the phones that I had were stolen. I don't have them anymore, and they require me to take a picture of the MTC number or some crap on the back, and I didn't have that. Like, I wasn't expecting to have my stuff stolen. But once Natalie was gone, you know, when she died, like, I knew that being homeless was the worst possible situation, because when you're homeless, your shit gets stolen all the fucking time. The amount of evidence.
It's not a judge that you need. You need to have a lawyer that knows what the hell he's talking about.
That takes money, and I don't have any. They took all my money. All I get is public pretenders.
Right. But to actually hire a fucking actual criminal defense lawyer, I mean, I know definitely should cost, but
that's the thing, is that I've called hundreds of them. It doesn't matter because I don't have any money. Almost all of them tell me that they don't work for free, and a few of them have given me free legal advice. They said, hey, you need to write it down, and you need to get your witnesses to write it down, and you need them to come forward in court. If you end up in a situation where you have to talk to a police officer, you need someone to go with you. And these are lawyers that I talked to before Natalie was even killed. I mean, that whole time, that whole year before Natalie was killed, I was going through hell. I couldn't go to visit you. I couldn't go and visit Rabbit. You know, when I was at Janine's that day and Derek got into the argument with JoJo, like, that wasn't anything to do with me. But Derek went off on me for fucking 3 days, ultimately resulting in him assaulting me. And that's the thing, is that it had nothing to do with me. I was there to try to get help with the Natalie situation, and I couldn't get anything done because Derek was too busy fucking acting like a 3-year-old. Like, literally the whole time I was there.
Not surprised, man. I'm really not surprised. As far as that, like, I lived at fucking Janine's. Well, it wasn't even Janine's. It was wherever the fuck, I forgot. Anyhow, yeah. There was definitely some points there where it was just like, yeah, we're getting the fuck out of
here. Yeah. And you know, Janine, she wasn't a bad person. I mean, she's very opinionated, but the problem there was always Derek. I mean, he's a fucking petulant child in an adult's body, and it's difficult to deal with it, especially when he always thinks he's right. And he is so quick to jump to violence as a solution. I'm like, dude, no, I'm not interested in beating the shit out of you. I need help, you know. I mean, I went to him for help before Natalie died. I went to Mark Swanigan for help before Natalie died. I went to JoJo for help before Natalie died. I went to A-Bear for help before Natalie died. I went to Miss Peaches for help before Natalie died. And everybody was too busy talking over me and blowing me off. I didn't have the opportunity to tell them what was going on because they just wouldn't shut the fuck up. Now, Derek and JoJo, they did end up taking me to Nebraska because I had to make a choice between living in Nebraska here where it's hell, or living closer to my friends, but at a safe enough distance that I wasn't in Boulder because people were assaulting me there. When Natalie disappeared, I thought she was still in Virginia.
Hey, if you did come back up here, like, there's still, like, very, like, everything has changed up here. Like, there's not really many homeless people. The homeless people that I do see, I don't even recognize. Like, only maybe a few of them, and that's about it.
Yeah, I heard about the roundup.
Yeah, I mean, but up here, it's gotten weird. It's like they're doing tent city, as far as, like, right next to the creek, behind the fucking Justice Center. You know, basically, like, right out wherever. And, you know, with this whole pandemic thing, yeah, sure, they can do a roundup, but I think at this point, like, it will be seen after, like, that video that you sent with, God, what was his name again? The black
dude. Laurent Faust?
No. The video that you sent me that had, I think it was the lady that got shoved by the officer, and then there was the other guy.
Waylon Lolatai, Sammy Leon Lawrence IV is one of the people he assaulted. Another one was, he was there for the Zayd Atkinson situation, which that was on, like, Dateline and stuff. So, I mean, it was national news.
I'm friends with him on Facebook. Sammy Leon Lawrence. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook.
So was I. He was a fucking douchebag. He wanted me to pay attention to his disabilities, but he was making absolutely no leeway for mine. He was a fucking dickhead, and a judgmental dickhead at that.
I mean, he definitely has kind of like a somewhat narcissistic tendency about the way that he goes about certain situations and whatnot. But as far as like somebody wanting to listen, I think honestly, like when you bring something up about what's important to you, it is important to have details, but you put it in a way where, you know, how like storytellers generally have like a hook, line, sinker. And it's not necessarily like trying to like really have you look at you like so intently, but to actually have the story be, I want to say interesting. It's not the word I'm looking for, but it's like a more of like I'll say it this way. A lot of people have this weird narcissistic tendency to want to make whatever conversation that they have with somebody, even if it's not about them, to be about them. Or at least have them be a part of it, or they pull them into a correlation with.
That's something I've been dealing with most of the people that offered to help, is that I'm trying to tell them the story, and they're too busy telling me their story. They're too busy interrupting me to tell me what they think, and so on and so forth. But before we can really do anything, I need to be able to establish it as a timeline, which means they need to stop asking questions and actually listen. But most people are too argumentative because they spend too much time on Facebook. And when you're trying to show them something in person, they're busy playing devil's advocate. Like, dude, I can't stop every 30 seconds to answer a question, especially when, sure, that question is valid, but it's not valid at this point in the story. Like, I did eventually threaten people back, but the fact is I threatened people back. I didn't start off threatening people, and I didn't go running around threatening to kill every person that I met. You know, all of the people that I threatened were people who had threatened me, and many of them actually harmed me, actually physically harmed me. What I needed when Natalie first died was somebody to have the fucking balls to go in with me to talk to the police. Matter of fact, I needed that before Natalie died, but everybody wanted to fucking argue. Everybody wanted to tell me about themselves. Everybody wanted to tell me pretty memes, like pretty memes are going to fix it. And it's difficult to explain a situation when people are busy telling you, oh, you just need to let it go. Like, I'm trying to explain to you that people are assaulting me, and you're telling me I just need to let it go. I haven't even got to explain that I'm being assaulted, but you're telling me to let it go. Or you need to love yourself. Like, that is not fucking advice. I need to love myself doesn't get me an honest day in court. It doesn't stop Natalie Bollinger and her friends from harming me long distance. Like, Natalie Bollinger was in Virginia, and I was being assaulted in Boulder over the things that she said. And she said that I stalked her in Virginia. I can prove that I didn't stalk her. All the things that we did in Virginia were what Natalie wanted. We did what, well, all right, that's not true. We did what Alicia wanted because Natalie was subservient to her sister. But then when I left, you know, I was hoping that was the end of it, but it wasn't the end of it. Do what?
All of that has an intertwining like factor of the aspects, and like there's no one little thing that happened that is not a part of what you know happened as far as you know her. You know, I don't think she actually went on to Facebook and like, you know, made some kind of fucking like profile to, you know, find somebody to actually kill her, even though that's
she did.
What the fucking little reel said.
She actually did. There's a former officer in Denver named William Barr, and I'm friends with it, or used to be friends with his wife until this situation. But he was an investigator down there doing internet investigations because he was fired from the police department. And he said, yeah, that post was real. It really did happen. He really did send that post. But the problem is, she did. She did.
Okay. I thought you said he. I was like, what the fuck?
No, she really did make that.
So that being the case, there's got to be something within that, you know, obviously something happened within her past, and she might have talked to you about it. Maybe not. I don't know. That could have been like it could be something that like didn't seem so like heavy weighing at the time, as far as like just hearing what she had to say, because generally people like to kind of sugarcoat shit and then just whatever. But as far as that, I mean, like, there's got to be some reason behind why that happened, or why she decided to do something like that. And some of it, I will have to say, that when you're doing drugs as heavy as heroin and methamphetamines, your mind's like a freaking like it's like trying to fucking pin down a chimpanzee when it's fucking running around in the trees or something.
Yeah. It's called a psychosis. And one of her friends named Sierra recently had a meth-induced psychosis. I mean, she was completely out of it, completely paranoid, thought everybody was out to get her. But that's the difference between a psychosis and what I've been dealing with, is that I don't have a psychosis. These people who assaulted me actually assaulted me. Natalie is actually dead. They keep trying to pretend that they call me mentally ill, and they use it loosely to mean schizophrenic. So they've been trying to have me pegged as schizophrenic as an excuse not to look at evidence. Like, oh, well, we can justify the fact that we won't look at evidence because he's mentally ill. So, obviously he's crazy and doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. So they don't take a statement from me. And then when it comes to sentencing, they do something that's actually felonious in the United States. If they're going to call me crazy and treat me like I'm crazy, they have to follow through with that crazy thing until the end of court. And they didn't.
Right.
I was crazy. As far as me being able to speak up, as far as being heard, well, they wouldn't hear me because I'm quote unquote crazy. But then when it come to sentencing, when they tortured me, literally tortured me into making a guilty plea, like that was the most screwed up thing, because then they're telling me that I'm sane enough and I should have known better and so on and so forth. I wasn't allowed to speak, not in any of my court dates, not a single one. And that all came down to nobody being there in person to witness it. They do whatever they want when it's just you. The most likely, or the thing that is the most likely to get you incarcerated in court has nothing to do with evidence. It has to do with whether somebody goes in with you and shows that they care. Now, with me, how am I going to, all of my disability money, because I am disabled, all of my disability money after being assaulted by Waylon Lolatai was going to pay the courts. First, I had, because I'm unsafe in that area, but I have to spend the money to go there to have these appointments or go to these meetings or go to my court date. And then I have to drive all the way back to somewhere that's reasonably safe. That's Chapel, Nebraska. But in Chapel, Nebraska, people even threaten my life to this day, So, I mean, it's something where I'm dealing with stuff that people thought went away. Do what?
As far as Chapel, Nebraska, that's not anything to do with Natalie, right?
It is. It's all to do with Natalie. That's the thing, is that her friends gang stalked me for a whole year before she died. I went to the cops here. I even went to Officer Ramos. I mean, that's how serious it was. I went specifically to Boulder to talk to Officer Ramos about the assaults that I was enduring there. Now, I did get to briefly explain what was going on. And he explained to me about the jurisdiction thing, about how I really couldn't do anything about Natalie, and neither could he because she was in Virginia. Well, it turns out she hadn't been in Virginia that whole time. She'd been in Colorado. And then people are like, oh, well, you stalked her for a whole year before she died. Like, no, I didn't even know she was in Colorado. All of the things that she wrote on that public post, those are all things that happened while I was in Virginia that she had asked me to do. Like, she asked me to go to Virginia. Matter of fact, she tried to kill herself because I wasn't there fast enough. I mean, imagine the fucking pressure that puts on a human being, that somebody that you care about is going to fucking kill themselves if you don't show up. So I showed up and she killed me for it. I haven't had a life. I can't go to see my loved ones in Boulder, in Denver, anywhere safely. I have to worry about the police. I have to worry about any bullshit that they're dealing with. Like, there's a few people that, I didn't expect them, especially since they were sober when I knew them. I didn't expect them to be all strung out on meth when I went to see them, or strung out on ketamine. Like, when I was exactly, and that's one of the drugs that they put into me is ketamine. It's dissociative. It literally makes you artificially schizophrenic. And for some people, it lasts about 2 weeks, and for some people, it lasts forever. But it's about 2 weeks worth of a frontal lobotomy, chemical lobotomy.
So one question I have about that, as far as the ketamine, did they do it intravenously?
Yeah, they shot me in the ass with it, actually. They told me at the hospital, because I was trying to turn in Officer Lolatai and all of the people who were harassing and threatening to kill me and all this other stuff, and they weren't hearing it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I mean, as far as the justice system, it's not justice, it's just us and ourselves if it's us, as far as us being, me, myself, and I, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. It's hard to really get something into somebody's hands that actually wants to listen and actually genuinely understand what you're trying to say, because of the factor that, again, like I said, I mean, a lot of humans, probably every single human that I've ever met has had a point in their life where, they seem to have like this self-aggrandizing thing, but if they are not seeing the light that they want to be seen in, then it's like blaming that on someone else, which is like a narcissistic tendency that humans just innately have. And it's especially with judgment, because nobody likes to be judged. But if somebody is put in a position of power to, be a judging aspect within, themselves or what they've been a part of or somebody else, then generally, for the most part, like everybody wants to have that fight thing, and the fight and flight both come into the same thing when you're dealing with justice system, because
yeah, that's what they call it. Pain compliance is what they called it when they did it to me, but it's literally torture. I mean, I was trying to turn in the cops when I was in a Vista hospital. That was right before I was sent to Clearview. I was in a Vista, and I was telling them I needed a cop. I tried calling 911. They told me it was a felony to call 911 from inside of a hospital. So I said, you need to get me an officer. And they wouldn't do it. And I told them, well, am I being held? They said, no, you're here of your own. I don't remember the word that they used, but basically they were saying that I was there voluntarily. I said, well, then I'm leaving. And they tackled me to the floor and injected me with ketamine, Ativan, and Benadryl.
So those are all psychoactive, fucking like drugs.
Yeah, and the thing is that they were doing that to try to discredit me, because the police knew what they were doing was wrong. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that what the police were doing was wrong. The problem is that without help in person to try to get somebody to do something, they were allowed to destroy that body camera evidence. Now, the body cam or the evidence from Natalie's case, however, that's a murder case. They can't destroy that evidence, which means that I can use that evidence in court.
It may not to destroy it, but it can also be, doctored in a way to tailor certain aspects. And
they've done that a lot too.
Body cam it was, or if it's multiple body cams, maybe they just said that only one body cam was working at the time because it ran out of batteries, and then this person, their body cam just had a glitch or some crap.
I'm dealing with that here. The thing is that there was at least 6 officers here between State Patrol and the Sheriff's Department the day that I was assaulted last month. And they're claiming that they only have one body camera. you know, and they're claiming that Scott DaCosta never touched me. The fact is, Scott DaCosta was on top of me while I was on the ground. And they're claiming that he never touched me, and that is complete bullshit. What I was doing at the time was trying to turn in Scott DaCosta. I've been trying to do that for 3 years. Like, his officers did wrong things in 2017 and in 2018, and when I went to him about it, I got sent to a nuthatch in Scotts Bluff. Like, this is what they do when you have to go in by yourself. Those officers threatened and harassed me and literally tried to run me out of town. But that was in 2018. Now, last month, when they were doing that stuff, I'd gotten a few people, one of them named Sandy Fromm and one of them named Wendell McPhee, told me, hey, the sheriff is running around, you know, telling people he's going to run you out of town. So I called 911. 911 said, we can't investigate our own officers. You have to call the Nebraska State Patrol. So I called the Nebraska State Patrol. They told me, well, we don't police the police. You have to go to that jurisdiction. You have to go to the Dual County Sheriff's Department. So I went to the Dual County Sheriff's Department. They told me we can't investigate ourselves. And I literally went back and forth 6 times between these people saying, hey, I am trying to get fucking help here. I have gone through 3 years of it's nobody's job. It's nobody's job. It's nobody's job. This is obviously someone's job. I am being harmed to this day. To this very day, I am harmed over the situation with Natalie. And I didn't stalk her. I sure as shit harassed her. I harassed her to put a fucking stop to this. I harassed her to call off the dogs. Hey, Natalie, I'm being harmed for shit that I didn't fucking do. And when you send me your email address, I'll send you all of the emails between me and Natalie, including the one that started all this off, the one where she tells me about her mom and her dad and the horrible shit that they did. And then I'll send you the stuff from me and Tim Beeson, that's her ex-boyfriend, who literally held her down and screamed in her face and stole her dog. He wasn't going to give her dog back unless she took him back. She had to give up her dog. That's how she ended up in Virginia. Tim Beeson, she went over there to get her dog, and he fucking slammed her on the floor and held her down and was screaming in her face. And see, that's the thing, is that right after Natalie died, that dude was literally threatening to kill me. He was trying to incite other people to kill me. A lot of people have threatened to kill me, and a lot of people have literally assaulted me over and over again. But I can't get the cops to listen unless someone who is informed goes in with me. Like when Molly Smith went in with me, she didn't know shit. And Han, when he went and asked her, you know, what all she knew, she said that she didn't know hardly anything. And as a result, they didn't investigate. They didn't bother talking to Laura Nelson. They didn't bother talking to any of the other witnesses. Now, there's also the situation of a lot of the places where I stayed, people were on drugs and they were abusing their fucking kids. And for me, not being able to go to the police, I always tell somebody. I always tell someone. But the thing is, those people didn't do anything. And I made sure that the people that I was telling, especially in the cases of child abuse, were mandated reporters. They have to turn it in. The problem is none of them did. They also used a lot of excuses to separate me from my evidence and also to separate me from my money. And I haven't had the money to take care of myself. I'm disabled. You know, the average income for a male is about $46,000 a year. For a female, it's almost $42,000 a year. For a disabled person, it's $9,800 a year. 9,800. That's 1/4 of the amount that women are bitching about getting. That's less than 1/4 of what women are bitching about getting because it's not as much as men. Meanwhile, we need to look at this as an individual situation, because a lot of the men who are helping to average it out so that it's higher, these are CEOs. These are assholes who are rich like Donald Trump. There are a lot of those people. But I'm not Donald Trump. It's not okay to classify me in the same group as Donald Trump just because of my skin color or just because of my gender. I didn't grow up a rich bitch. You didn't grow up a rich bitch. Shit, I've met your dad, dude. You guys were not rich people.
No, I'm not. Work every day for everything I got. But,
And when you weren't working, you were playing the guitar on Pearl Street. I remember that. I remember your Takamine Jasmine, and I remember that Jackson that you had for like 2 months before it got stolen too. Like I remember everybody, you know, it's not like I forget everybody and I forget all the good things that they did. I'm pissed off because they need to speak up about it. I'm not heard. I'm called mentally ill. They play it off as if I'm schizophrenic. And as a result, it doesn't matter how honest I am, they're not going to look. Like I tried to tell the cops that I was going to you for help, and they're like, well, how do we know you didn't make that guy up? You know, how do we know it's not a figment of your imagination? So on and so forth. And they did that about me with you. They did that about me with Miss Peaches. They did that about me with a lot of different people. No matter what, I explained to people, you have to go in with me or nothing is going to happen. And I have it recorded with me explaining to these officers what's going on, especially with a child molester here in Chapel, Nebraska. And they keep telling me, oh, well, how do we know you didn't write that yourself? How do we know this and how do we know that? Now, I have a statement from Derek, and I have statements from a lot of different people, but the cops won't take them because those people themselves aren't the ones turning it in. Also, I wrote down a lot of statements that I took into the cops, and they refused to take it because it wasn't on their official police parchment. So then I wrote it on their official police parchment, and they brought it back to me. Also, I'm not sure if you remember a meth dealer named George, kind of an older guy with gray hair, hung out with Christine.
I know Homesteader.
Yep. Well, he was there for one of the assaults in the jail. Do what?
I said, that dumb man tried to rob a bank.
Yep, a couple of them. He got busted.
I don't know if you remember this other girl too, and I'm still in contact with her.
Rachel?
Nope. Alexis.
I might. Is that his ex-girlfriend Star or current girlfriend? I don't know which.
No. I don't think they've ever dated or anything like that. But you know, she was with Jaber or whatever for a short amount of time.
Was that Alexis Valentine? Because she died a few years ago.
No, definitely not. Different Alexis. She was like probably 6'1" or something like that. Really tall, blonde. Had quite a few piercings, whatnot.
I probably wouldn't remember. If she had a street name, I might remember her, but that's thing.
So her street name was Karma.
Karma?
Yep.
I know Karma. Yeah, I do know Karma. I didn't know her name was Alexis.
Yeah, so she goes by Alexis MC on Facebook. So, but yeah, I stay in contact with her here and there just to like kind of check up, be like, hey, so how you doing? Because there's the points there throughout her being in Boulder and whatnot. Part of the reason why she went away from Boulder was, the drug habit, the people that she met. It was kind of the same thing with Nikki Heska.
Yep.
She moved away because there was other things that she needed to do, and thankfully both of them are doing much better relations as far as what they were doing before. Both of them were heavily into methamphetamines and whatnot.
Yep.
Honestly, I might have been one of the only ones that was like you really don't have to do this shit. Like, this is garbage.
Yep. When I left Chapel, Nebraska in 2016, it was because all my friends here were on meth and I wasn't going to deal with it, so I left. But have you ever, even once, ever seen me do meth? Nobody has.
Nope. I don't think you would be. I mean, your brother, sure, but not you.
Yep. And that's something that's been killing me too. Like I after
if
Virginia.
Anything, I would ever see you doing is smoking a bowl of weed.
Yep. And I tried explaining that, but the thing is, when the cops really have your number, they just they go and tell the doctors what it is that they want, and the doctor can do what the police want, and then you're screwed. you know. As far as George goes, though, he was a witness to. I've been assaulted by the police on uh, 14 or 15 different occasions now. And George was a witness to one of them, but there are witnesses to a lot of the assaults that I endured. The thing is, many of them are afraid to come forward. The thing with George, George said that he's not afraid of the police there. He'll write it down and all that. But the problem is, I have to be able to coordinate with him, and I also have to be able to get there to my court dates safely. All of my disability money for the last 4 years has been spent. All of it. It all goes to the courts or to traveling to try to get to a safe place where I'm not being harmed long enough that I can actually go through all the stuff that I need to. But I'm in a constant state of panic because shit like this keeps happening. I literally can't take care of myself. And then the sheriff here in Chapel, Nebraska has done everything that he can to cut me off from the resources that I need. You know, he literally, the guy that I was staying with, he threatened the guy and used his children as leverage. Like, how fucked up is that? On the bright side, I have that recorded. I also have the conversation with George recorded where he talks about the assault. And that was in the Boulder County Jail in August of 2018. I mean, that's 7 months after Natalie was killed.
Okay, so this like all this stuff is something you need a compilation of, like, you know, taking all that information and simplifying it. That's what I'm talking about. Like, when you finally go through all the stuff, you already have all the evidence. Make sure it's all on paper. That way, when you're going through it, you can kind of pull out the points in what is on the page, and then, you know, put that as like, you know, a singular paragraph with like, these are the bullets. These are the things that.
When you said that, I probably already thought of it way back at the beginning of the conversation. You're right. All of that stuff, not only have I thought of, I've been doing and implementing. And a lot of the problem is people just keep stealing it. And without somebody in person, nobody's going to look at it. Like when you weren't able to help me to get my evidence there at the not Broomfield Police Department, but when you weren't able to do that because your car busted, Tabby's daughter, you know Sydney?
I think so.
Well, you probably haven't seen her in a few years, but Tabby's second oldest, Sydney, her and her boyfriend drove me to go get that. So I was able to get that evidence. I literally have 2 full, you know, those suitcases that you drag behind you on wheels through the airport? I got 2 of those that are completely full of paper evidence. My phones are completely full of screenshots and video evidence. My computer is completely full of screenshots and video evidence. I have close to 12,000 screenshots. Only 8,000 of them are on my computer. There's an additional 4,000 that are probably lost to the world. I don't know. I'm trying to get a hold of it. There's also the screenshots that Miss Peaches has, and a lot of the evidence there that I because those phones were stolen and because those computers were stolen, I don't have access to that information except on the USB drive that Miss Peaches has. But the problem is, Miss Peaches, after, you know, over a year of her promising to come forward and basically just making nonstop empty promises, I literally had to fucking say, hey, Miss Peaches didn't do a goddamn thing to help. And she did a lot of things to help. She just never spoke up. So it wasn't help. It was a waste of our time. It was a waste of our resources. And it destroyed our friendship. Like, the least she could have done is tell the truth. You know, the police wrote down that I wasn't trying to get help. But literally, they had been cutting me off from help since day one.
All right, so that should be part of the compilation.
Yep. The problem is I literally had to start all over in Washington State. I've started over 3 different times, basically from scratch. A lot of the evidence that was on those phones, and that was the most important part, because most of the time I wasn't in an area where I had internet access. All I could do was text them. But the problem is that with all of my phones completely full of evidence, they won't take any more screenshots. I have to destroy screenshots that are on there in order to take more. So I have to scroll through and decide what's the most important, and all of it's important, but I have to go, all right, well, is this on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it? Because right now I'm looking at something that's an 8, so I got to get rid of something that's only a 7 or less.
I take it you've looked quite a bit into at least what's available in whatever library you get to as far as logistics, as far as basic rules, regulations, and whatnot, as far as coming forward with the statement with the courtroom, as far as
well, I've been through all that, and I've tried to do it all the legal way. The problem is that when I go in by myself, it doesn't matter what's legal. They just turn off their body cameras. That's why it's important to have somebody go in with me. Miss Peaches understood that I needed somebody to go in with me. There were at least 6 people who promised to go in with me, and none of them ever kept their word. Now, only 2 of them were situations where it was my fault. Like with Katie Kate, the reason that me and her didn't go in together, I mean, part of it was her fault. She had only set aside an hour for it, and she didn't realize it was going to take more than that. But there's also the fact that I was running late. I was at Walmart in Longmont. I had to go to the bathroom, and I was supposed to meet her in like 5 minutes, but I wasn't able to. So I explained to her, all right, I had to go to the bathroom. And she's like, well, I only set aside an hour for this. So we weren't able to. Mandy Hughes was going to go in with me to talk to the police too, but she had warrants. Now I had to, after I literally had to flee the state of Colorado for my own safety because none of these people came forward, I recorded them and I put them on YouTube. Like, this is the shit that you should have fucking spoke up about in court, but you didn't. And Miss Peaches didn't like that, but at the same time, she'd been helping out Blaine McCrelius, or Freak.
The fucking method.
Yep. Him and Dawn both big heavy meth heads. Matter of fact, she's the one that assaulted me at Ken and Leah's, and that's the reason that I left on the 26th of December of 2017, was because I needed to get a lawyer. Ken and Leah stole all of my money, and there was nothing I could do about it. And when I confronted them about it, because they were supposed to pay me back on the 8th of December, and they didn't, like, by the time Natalie was killed, like, I literally found out that I had a court date after Natalie was dead. Like, I didn't know how protection orders worked. But also, I wouldn't have been able to go. I didn't have any money. Ken and Leah stole it all. And that's in addition to me paying rent and paying extra rent so that I was paid up. But then when it got to the point where, like, obviously, they were assholes to me pretty much the whole time I was there. Ken was all right, but Leah is a selfish bitch. They also treat their autistic son like shit.
Talking about like 5'2" fucking Leah or some shit like that.
Yeah. But while I was there, like, they ripped off my money, and Leah is buying herself all sorts of stuff with my money. They want me to buy their pot, and I don't have any money to buy pot. I already gave them $100 for pot, and they didn't come back with any pot. Well, they did, but they smoked it all without me. And I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't even want to smoke pot. The only reason I'm smoking pot is because I am stressed out because of the way that you and Leah are treating me, especially Leah. I need that money to survive. That's my disability money, Ken. I am disabled. And that's when Dawn Bird came out and was assaulting me with her chest. I mean, she was just running into me with her chest, but at the same time, like, she did that until I literally backed out of the back door. I was not safe there. And this is after Ken and Leah are both literally in the kitchen screaming at me at the top of my lungs. Ken is literally in my face. I'm backed up against the sink. I don't want to fight. And I already know from seeing the way that Ken deals with Gabriel that Ken is going to jump to violence his first opportunity. So I literally just have to take it. So when I went to Miss Peaches to try to get help with that, and I was at Miss Peaches, like, she had to have back surgery, and then after that she was going to help me, and that's when I got the phone call that Natalie was missing. But I literally went to her to try to get help with the situation with Ken and Leah and the situation with Natalie, which had been ongoing for over a year. Now, Miss Peaches, she did a lot to help me, but she never ever spoke up in court, and she never once went in with me to make a police report. And that was the major issue, is that without you speaking up, Miss Peaches, it doesn't matter how much you think that you're helping me. If you don't speak up about it, they're going to put their own narrative, and there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it, because they called me mentally ill. They're literally trying to have me diagnosed as schizophrenic in order to get away with their crimes. And Miss Peaches was not listening. She was too busy telling me how to think and how to feel. Then they did exactly that. They went out of their way to try to have me pegged as schizophrenic in order to justify their sins. And police have literally played on that mentally ill tag since before Natalie was killed. I mean, they pushed her and her druggy friends, especially Maddie Boa, pushed me to the point where I was literally begging people to kill me before Natalie died. Either help me or fucking kill me. And you know what? That is my mantra to this day. Fucking help me or kill me. See, that's the thing, is that people thought that when Natalie's killer was found, that everything was fine and dandy and was going to go back to normal and people were leaving me alone. No, I still have people to this day in Chapel, Nebraska threaten to kill me. And it's all over the Natalie situation. Every fucking bit of it.
Well, as far as that, I'm sure you thought about that too. As to just figuring out the. Let me put it this way. People hear what they hear.
They hear what they want to.
But they don't actually take the time to read anything or actually research anything that means anything, or give a fuck to research anything. Just, oh, that's news. Oh, wow, this person.
They assumed my guilt, and the thing is, you're right. The public did that, and so did the police. When the police realized that they fucked up, they kept on doing the same shit. And when the public realized that I didn't kill Natalie, they went right back to what people were harming me over before Natalie died. Because she claims that I stalked her, which is an outright fucking lie. People harmed me for an entire year before she fucking died. They drove me to the point that I wanted my life to end. And the police wouldn't do anything about it. All they'd do is lock me up. And then they treat me like I'm a bad person. They literally assault me, forcing me into the fight or flight mode. And then they charge me with assault, because when you're in cuffs, there is no flight. There is no flight. And you're in extreme physical pain, and they're doing this to you intentionally. And that's the thing with Waylon Lolatai, is that he was trying to feign an assault so that they wanted to be able to say, oh, we caught the killer. And you can see in the or not in the body cameras, because I wasn't allowed the body camera footage. That was destroyed, by the way. Same thing here in Nebraska. I tried to turn in the sheriff here, and they destroyed the body cam evidence. They only hold on to it for a year, and they never bothered to investigate. Everybody who tried to talk to the cops, they tried to convince them that I was crazy. From Mandy Hughes to Kayla Trujillo to people here in this town. Even there's a lady named Star who came all the way from Georgia to try to help me, and the people who were supposed to be investigating Scott DaCosta were, instead of investigating him, they were busy trying to convince her that I was crazy and I was a lost cause. And they have repeatedly done this over and over and over again. And then there's Sarah Rubiolo. Like, she was aware of the situation, and people were literally harassing her and threatening her over it. And almost everybody who offered to help was treated that way. I was like, hey, you guys need to come forward about this. When I was at Candace Bondurant's, that was after the assault by Waylon Lolatai, and that was before Clearview, and it was also before, obviously, because Clearview was before they found Natalie's killer. Like, yeah, Candace was intimidated. She's got 2 daughters, and she was threatened with being thrown out into the January snow with her kids if she didn't immediately eject me from the household. Like, I had no safe place to go. I had to go back to Todd's, and at the time, he was strung out on fucking ketamine. He was not in his right fucking mind. Do what?
We're still friends. Actually, he's, I don't know if you still, like, have any Todd's actually doing a hell of a lot better than he was.
You know, he was one of the greatest heroes on Pearl Street for a lot of years. And then he stopped going because, well, I'm sure you're aware of the situation with, I guess that doesn't matter in this scenario, but yeah, you know, he stopped actually going to Pearl Street and being a part of our lives because there were safety issues and concerns for him. Now, you know, a lot of people, you know, like how many years did I pass out blankets and walk people to the warming centers?
Longer than I've worked at Bridge House. So, I mean, at least like 12, 14 years or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
To this day.
But the other thing is, like, I haven't been able to pass out those blankets for about 4 years. I've been, ever since I hurt my back, the border police made my life hell. They wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. And I was going to kill myself over it. And that's when Natalie came into my life. Before that, I didn't even know her fucking name.
Yeah, when I looked on her Facebook, there was a small picture of like some kind of remembrance, but honestly, like I don't even think we ever had an interaction. Just more or less like see this person in passing.
Yeah,
I'm really, really good with remembering faces and whatnot, but
not names.
Yeah, not names, but along with the faces, I generally remember pretty well about certain interactions and stuff like that.
Yep.
I don't really remember anything about her. I just know that the only thing that comes to mind is like her face and then her riding a longboard or something. I think that's what it was.
Well, when all this happened, like before Natalie was killed, I was trying to get a lawyer, and they were telling me, hey, if you're being called mentally ill, you're going to need to have somebody go in with you. You have to have a guardian or something. And if you don't have one of those, then you need to have the witnesses come forward. They need to go in with you for your safety and for theirs when making a police report, especially if you're filing a report against the police. And at that point, I needed to file a report against the police. They weren't doing anything. Now, this is obviously before Natalie was killed. And after she was killed, like, you know, I'd gone to Jeff Ritter through the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless. I'd been going to Kara Heller through the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless. I'd been talking to Nicole Jarrell, who was working with battered women. And I was also talking to Nicole Peralta here in Nebraska. But then none of these people can come forward unless I get a subpoena. And in order to get a subpoena, they have to come forward. You see in the catch-22 here?
Yeah. Honestly, like I've seen this not in that aspect, but when I worked in oil and glass so I've seen something like this before, where it's kind of like the same thing, where you're not going to get anywhere a person of the justice system working with you.
Well, that's the thing, is that because of the term mentally ill, I can't go the standard route. I can't just go to a lawyer. And the lawyers have all explained this to me over and over and over again. If you're being called mentally ill and you are being harmed, you have to have someone go in with you. You literally cannot go and talk to the police alone. And this is what the lawyers were telling me before Natalie was killed. That's why I was trying to get a hold of Miss Peaches, and Miss Peaches was promising to help. And I was getting a hold of JoJo, and she was promising to help. And they never helped. Like Miss Peaches, you know, when I first went to her about the situation with Natalie, it was, I want to say November or December of 2016. I mean, it was only a couple of months after I left Virginia. I'd already been assaulted several times according to what's legally assault, but I wasn't, you know, considering it assault because I was just being shoved around. And you've seen that happen to people, you know, they're getting pushed and told they need to get the fuck out of there and stuff. And, you know, at that point, you either beat the living fuck out of the son of a bitch who's pushing you or you leave. And am I a violent person? obviously. So I left. And that's the thing, is that this whole time they've been trying to peg me as a violent child molester. And I have evidence that that's not true. But at the same time, that fight or flight thing, when those officers were 100% certain that I was guilty, and they assumed my guilt, and anything that they did was going to be fine because I was going to be going to prison for murder anyway. Well, when it turned out that I didn't murder anybody, well, they backtracked, and all they were interested in was hiding the fact that they didn't do their fucking jobs. They literally broke the law. Now, the thing with George Helmstetter, he got to see at least one of the assaults in the Boulder County Jail. When I was sent to the Boulder County Jail in August of 2017 or 2018, like, I'd already been assaulted at the Boulder County Jail over the Waylon Lolatai situation in January. I'd been trying to turn in the officers at that jail and the officers who were present for like 7 months by that point. And, that literally, when George saw me being assaulted, that was 4 days worth of assault. They held me at the Boulder County Jail so that I couldn't make it to my court date in Arapahoe. And then they transferred me on the 29th when I was supposed to have my court date so they could say, oh, well, he wasn't in Boulder County Jail and he wasn't in Arapahoe County Jail. He was out on his own and he just didn't want to show up at court. But the fact is, they literally held me to prevent me from going to my court date. And they have done that repeatedly. And then because they didn't actually book me in until the 30th. So then they're like, oh, well, you weren't actually, incarcerated at that point in time. I'm like, I was literally transferred from the Boulder County Jail to the Arapahoe County Jail by two officers who assaulted me and then later killed a man named Demetrius Shankly. I'm not sure if you paid any attention to that. The two officers who were charged with manslaughter.
Yeah. Which county?
Boulder.
County.
Yep. If you look up the name Demetrius Shanklin, you'll see those two officers' faces.
I heard something about that, but they played it down pretty heavily.
Yeah, they did. They do always do that. But the thing is, like, when I went to you for help, I was strapped. I mean, I literally had nothing. I had no cash. I had nothing. But that's the thing, is like, they're pretending that I wasn't trying to get help. All of my money was going to the courts for harming me. So like, when I was going to you for help, I didn't have any money. When I went to Miss Tabby for help, she was having financial issues. I gave her like 500 and something bucks right off the bat the day that I walked in her door so that she had money for rent. I helped her clean up the house every single day. And I also dealt with her ex, Joshua Eichelberger, and his drunken antics every single day. Him yelling at his own daughter, who is only 3 years old, that she's a fucking cunt because it's 11 o'clock in the morning and they're playing. Like, dude, it's not their fault that you are an alcoholic and you've got a hangover. You don't call a fucking 3-year-old a cunt. If I call somebody a cunt, there's very specific situations that have to happen. Innocent people have to be either harmed or dead over something that you did in order for me to call you a cunt. I hate that word.
The funny thing is, like, all this stuff, everything that you're talking about, is exactly what I said before, where, there's certain things that are happening there people don't want to make public. And as far as, like, if it were to get out, it would be something that would be highly detrimental to the individual, as well as, like, possibly even more than just the micro to the macro.
Yeah. But all the lawyers have told me to this day, because of the mentally ill tag, before I can get a lawyer, I need somebody who knows me, somebody who has known me for at least 5 years, to write down on a piece of paper that I'm not schizophrenic, and they have to go in with me to court. They have to go with me to do these things. I can't just go in by myself, because the police will just say, oh, well, how do we know you didn't make that up on your own? And how do we know you didn't manufacture that? And I've been explaining that to people since before Natalie was killed. I've been talking to lawyers, and they can't help me, but they can give me some legal advice. Like they told me, hey, when people are threatening to kill you, you tell them that you are mentally ill. You have to tell them that you're mentally ill, because if they continue after you tell them that you're mentally ill, they're committing a felony. Well, I did that.
That's totally fucked up, because even that being a factor, I mean, that should be already something that would be in a report. You're already in the jail. You already know that. Then that being the case, then that's like disregard for important information on the subject.
Well, this was before I was in jail that this stuff was happening, and it has happened in jail as well. I mean, every step of the way, police have gone out of their way to obstruct justice for officers that did me harm. Now, there's also the fact that when I was assaulted by Waylon Lolatai, I was charged with assault. And that assault against a police officer is on my arrest record. Nearly every officer that I interact with gets to see that and treats me like I'm somebody who beats on cops. Meanwhile, it's Waylon Lolatai. The guy assaulted me in January. I told on him, but I was repeatedly harmed for trying to turn him in. And then he later harmed Sammy Leon Lawrence IV, which would not have happened if I'd have been heard. And then he assaulted Michelle Rodriguez, which would not have happened if I'd have been heard. He was there for the situation with Zayd Atkinson, which would not have happened if I'd have been heard. There are 22 dead bodies because of the police not listening to me, including Tibor Hatay, who is the guy who was killed at Clearview, and Dmitry Shankling, who was killed by two officers that I was illegally prevented from turning in. Literally, the only thing that all of these lawyers said, you need to write it down, you need to save all of the information that you can, you need to save the evidence, you need to organize it, and you need to turn it in with someone. The problem is that I've done that repeatedly. The computer that I had everything extremely well organized on, which took a long time, that got stolen in Washington State. Matter of fact, I have video of the situation, and also of Officer Schneider, who's the one who, this guy who stole my backpack that had my good computer in it. When he went and stole it, he had come up to me and he had asked me for a shirt because it was cold. I told him, all right, well, I need like 2 minutes to wrap up this video. And that video is still on my YouTube, by the way. But I told him, hey, I got like 2 minutes and I'll go over to my vehicle and get you a shirt. Well, he picked up my backpack and started walking off. And I didn't notice immediately. And I can't run because of my back issues. So I got up to follow him, but he's faster than me. There were two people that were in a vehicle, and I said, hey, did you see a dude with a backpack? They're like, yeah, he went that way. And that's when I saw him jump over the fence, and I confronted him about it. He didn't know that I couldn't run, and I kept on stepping in front of him. I was like, dude, go get my backpack and bring it to me. You need to bring me my backpack. Otherwise, there's a cop right over there who's parked, and I'm going to go talk to him. And so I went over there to talk to the cop and explain what was going on, and he completely blew me off. And then he got in his car and drove off. Later on, that dude went back and pulled all the important shit out of there, all of my USB drives, my computer, 2 telephones. I mean, he stole everything, and he left all of the paper evidence there. Thank goodness, because that paper evidence is important. But at the same time, I had to start all over again from scratch. Meanwhile, everything that was on this computer and the other computer that I still have, I mean, all of the stuff that was on those 2 computers, I transferred over to that other computer because it had a 1 terabyte hard drive, and it was able to hold all of that information. Whereas this computer I'm using now, it is slow as shit. It barely works because it's full of evidence. None of my phones will even take a picture because they're all full of evidence. My Google OneDrive or whatever it's called was completely full. After 3 years of trying to, figure out how to get more space on it, it's not that I didn't have the ability as far as the funding goes. Most of the time I didn't. But when I did, I still didn't have the ability to use a credit card in order to do that stuff online. I wasn't able to do that until, I want to say, last December is when I was finally able to get that working. But I mean, it's been 3 years of you know, people like you and people like Todd and people like Miss Peaches, people who were all part of the situation and part of the scenario, people who I had gone to for help. And the police wrote down that I wasn't even trying to get help, you know, and that's the thing about trying to get a hold of these people and say, hey, you need to fucking speak up, you know, and I don't want to say it like that because then it feels like I'm peer pressuring them to fucking smoke crack. And I'm not. I'm being harmed to this day. And a lot of people, I understand they've got their own lives going on, and I understand that they've got families, and that is something that I have been very patient with and very patient about. But by the time, you know, I'd been assaulted for 7 months straight and no end in sight, the Clearview thing, I literally just got out of jail for that again, and I still have to go back to Colorado for court for that. And it's not safe for me to even go to Colorado, let alone go to that court date. But I have to go. That's on the 26th. Now, I got court tomorrow morning. I got to be there at 9 a.m., and that's here in Dual County. The electronic stuff, to do it electronically, I don't know how to do any of that. So it's a good thing they're having court in person this one.
I'm guessing it's like a Zoom thing.
Well, my autism advocate. Oh, by the way, can I give your number to my autism advocate? All right, good. Because I mean, it would be a lot easier for her and for me if we could actually coordinate with people and get this done. There's a lot of people that I was trying to work together with, and they weren't understanding that I couldn't go to Boulder safely to meet with them. And then later on, they threw tantrums at me because they wanted to intentionally take something wrong. And that mostly comes from the fact that they're friends with my predators. Like Katie Whiteman, you know, I never, well, all right, I did expect her to pull some shit because she's always been a drama hound. She's a fat black woman in Boulder. She's not exactly popular. And people who aren't popular like that end up doing a lot of drama bullshit because they want to be popular. But ever since then, people have been manufacturing stories that I've been repeatedly harmed over. And there's people like you who almost everything that the cops said was outright bullshit. Now, if I could send you the stuff that the cops sent me, the stuff that they said about me, you'd be able to go through it and say, all right, this is bullshit. I know because I was there. Or you'd be able to say, this part is bullshit. I know because he did come to me for help. This part is bullshit because he doesn't fucking do drugs. This part is bullshit. This part is bullshit. This part is bullshit. And all the stuff that you can't verify from personal experience or interaction is bullshit. I have the evidence that I can send you that shows that it's bullshit. I've been having to work with complete and total strangers ever since Natalie died because of the safety issues of going to Colorado. There's a lot of people in Boulder that had no idea anything was going on. They're like, hey, man, I miss you. Where you been? I'm like, well, did you hear about the death of Natalie Bollinger? When I go to Boulder, I get assaulted. People like Derek Apodaca. Now, I made a squirt gun so that I could literally defend myself when people like Derek tried to assault me. And they tried to pretend that I was threatening to kill people with it. Like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, when I literally got to the point where I had to threaten in order to get a court date, it's because I couldn't get anybody to listen up to that point. Now, then there's situations like with you, you know, you weren't involved in a whole hell of a lot of it, but the parts that you were a part of are extremely important. They show that I was trying to get help and that people were trying to help me, that it was situations beyond my control that made it so that it didn't happen. Now, then there's the stuff that the police have done in order to prevent me from speaking. Like when I try to turn in a police officer, every fucking time they send me to a fucking nuthatch and they have me injected with drugs and try to have me diagnosed with something that I don't have. That's because they're trying to get themselves out of trouble. Scott DaCosta knows for a fucking fact he's in a shit ton of fucking trouble if I actually get to press charges against him. But they have done everything they can to prevent me from going to court dates, to make sure that I have no money so that I can't do these things. And it's fucking pissing them off that I am making sure that I go to court. It is pissing them off that I am getting the help to actually go to court, but they're still pulling this narrative that nobody's willing to help me, probably because of the way that I act. I'm like, hey, I didn't act like this to begin with. With Scott DaCosta, every time I try explaining the fucked up shit that he did, when I have another professional on the phone with him, he says, well, you yelled. Like, and then automatically the other so-called professional that I'm talking to is automatically on his side and talking like they're buddies with Scott DaCosta and they're only interested in my well-being. No, Scott DaCosta doesn't give a fuck about my well-being. He gives a fuck about hiding the fact that he literally committed multiple felonies. He's literally been going around town telling people in town not to worry about me because he's going to run me out of town. Wendell McPhee, Sandy Fromm, and there's several other people in town whose names I don't even fucking know, but I recognize their faces, telling me the same thing. And so I was trying to get somebody to do something, and instead the sheriff was allowed to come over here and fucking assault me. Meanwhile, I'd been trying to turn him into the state patrol, and Officer Burr, I've got this recorded on my YouTube, by the way. Officer Burr of the State Patrol here in Nebraska was telling me that he did turn it into an investigator when I tried to tell him what was going on in 2018. This has been 4 years of me trying to get help and police doing everything they can to make sure that it is too convoluted and too complicated to do a goddamn thing about. They ship me out of jurisdiction and then they say, well, you can't say anything about that because it's not in this jurisdiction. Well, fuck, what the hell? Do you think I just hatched out of a fucking egg there? No, you transferred me to Scotts Bluff for trying to turn you in. That's a big difference between that and, you know, me being some fucking psycho who's flipping out for no fucking reason. No, Scott, you committed felonies to protect your officers.
Right. And that's the practice that they always do. I mean, there's multiple videos on that on YouTube.
Well, I got multiple videos too. The problem is that in a lot of these occasions, like my phone's being too full to record anything else. It's been like that since I was up there in Washington State at the very end of 2018. You know, everything is full. It's a matter of getting someone to go in with me to show it to them because they're not going to look at anything from someone that they can call schizophrenic.
Okay. And now as far as that, again, I'm sure this is another thing you probably already thought about, is actually getting unabashed, reading or whatever. But it's like, getting an aptitude test as a non-bias opinion.
Well, that's the thing is that I went to non-biased people, and I was going to my own therapists before Natalie died. After Natalie died, I was cut off from being able to do those things. In addition, the police were trying to they were trying to have me pegged as mentally ill by taking me to, like, the Boulder Hospital is fucking famous for that. You try to turn in a police officer, they take you to the Boulder Hospital, and the Boulder Hospital calls you crazy, and then those officers get away with what they did. And they do that over and over and over and over again.
Well, I would not be surprised. Like you said, they gave you a bunch of drugs, and obviously, more than likely throughout that whole thing, they probably took a sample of your blood to say that, oh, you got opioid, whatever else.
Well, but they were able to. They didn't take a blood test at any of these places. At all of the hospitals that I went to, they didn't bother. They weren't gonna do anything of the sort. I wasn't on drugs, and they knew it. So they just wrote down what the cops asked them to, which is completely different from taking a blood test. If they'd have taken a blood test or a UA, what they would have found in my system through most of this is sometimes marijuana. About half the time, because most of the time since Natalie died, I haven't smoked. I'm not interested. When I am in an extremely stressful situation with people who are screamers, yes, I will fucking smoke a bowl. I am fucking fine with getting stoned off my ass because it's going to wear off in a few hours. Now, when I was a kid and I had that situation, they had me on 2 different medications. One of them I was taking, I had to take every day for anxiety, and it didn't help. It made me a fucking zombie. The other one that they gave me was I'm supposed to take at the onset of a panic attack, and it takes 3 to 5 hours to kick in. Meanwhile, my panic attacks only at that point in time only lasted about 3 to 5 hours. But they were all over the same thing. They were over me being afraid of my dad and what he was going to do as soon as he got some rum and coke in him. My dad gets violent. He's also one of those people who preaches while he's violent. Like he liked to punch me in the stomach while he's preaching. He'd punch me in the stomach. I have no air. I'm dancing around. And he's still preaching at me. And then when I regain my breath, he'd punch me in the stomach again.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a reason that my friends are my family, but there's also the fact that a lot of them, they haven't paid attention to what's been going on with me. They haven't bothered to stay in touch. And I'm literally begging them to fucking speak up. I'm begging them to do something. Like I said from the start, like I can't get a lawyer or get a lawyer to do anything unless somebody who knows me goes in with me. I also need at least 3 people who have known me for 5 years or more who are willing to sign on a piece of paper that I'm not schizophrenic, which that's pretty much everybody I know. Everybody knows I'm not schizophrenic. It's not a fucking rocket science. It's like everybody in Boulder knew that I was the guy you go to when you need blankets. Just like everybody knew that you could find me at Starbucks if there was an emergency. Like this is stuff that people just know because that's who I was. People knew that if they didn't want to walk a new homeless person who is drunk to a warming center, if they bring him to me, I'll walk him to the warming center. And every day that I went to the warming center, I signed my name to that piece of paper so that they could get the funding because I was there. But I also, I stayed there maybe 5 times in 7 years. I mean, I went back to my squat and slept because I can't deal with that many people.
I think you're probably already talking to Steve Thompson, right?
I have talked to Steve Thompson. Matter of fact, he went to one of my court dates, but there was no court date. I wasn't informed that there wasn't a court date. That was with Zoe Tanner. That was over the assault at Clearview. This has literally been over 3 years since I was assaulted. No, it's going to be 3 years on February 1st. It'll be 3 years since the assault at Clearview. I mean, they have kept that on me so that I can't turn in these officers. That is literally the reason they've done this. Also, they made sure that I wasn't able to contact any of these places or get the help that I need or get a public pretender to actually speak up. So I ended up with failure to appear. I literally never failed to appear. Literally, not once did I ever fail to appear to court before I was illegally prevented from doing so because they were trying to frame me. They were trying to hide their crimes. Now, on the 29th of August and the 30th of August, they're trying to claim that I was released from the Boulder County Jail and then I was picked up, basically, is what they're trying to sell as a narrative. But they're not actually saying that. They're just letting people jump to conclusions. But the fact is, I should have been in Arapahoe County. I should have been there the whole time. I literally had to break the law because nobody went in with me, and I needed to get a court date so that I could actually press charges against the Bollinger family. Danica Garner, Rochelle Shelley Campbell, Alicia Bollinger, Ted Bollinger. They'd literally been fucking gang stalking me for over a year by that point. And I had been gang stalked over Natalie for over a year before she was killed. Like, I needed the police to do their fucking jobs. And to this day, they're making every excuse not to.
Well, I tell you what, send me what you got, I'll text you my email. Send me what you got. I'll go through it. See what points that I can find, and try to see if I,
Well, the part that we have already, Meg has control of. She has a Google Drive, and I will have her send you the link. That way, you have the access to everything that we have sent already. But what is on there is about 1,800 pictures of or 1,800, 1,800 pictures of paperwork that I have. I literally have the paperwork. It's no more than 50 yards from here. It's in, sorry, that's my phone bleeping because I just plugged it in. It's starting to die.
So has it been broken down as far as like, or something like that?
Do what?
I said, has it been converted or downsized, or is like something that I can receive as a PDF and not that?
Oh no, there is way too much to do that. It's a Google OneDrive link though, so it won't download to your computer. You'll be able to just look at it, and if you need to download something, you can. But also keep in mind that's maybe 1% of the evidence that I have. Maybe. I mean, I have literally thousands of hours of conversations with witnesses. There's a lot of stuff that's on my YouTube, but the majority of the stuff is, as far as the videos and the recordings go, they're not on YouTube because there's too much personal information. A lot of these people have kids and they have to be afraid for their kids.
All right.
So you'll have access to that as well as soon as I'm able to download it.
Okay. I will text you my email, and then I'll text you the number of lawyer that I talked to. Hopefully, he can like point you in a direction.
Well, he's going to tell me the same things as the other lawyers. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are you doing on the 26th of this month?
What is the 26th? Now, so that would be like Tuesday next week.
Yeah.
All the time.
I can't hear you.
I work on Tuesday. The only days I generally have off is Wednesdays and Saturday. Yeah,
Shit.
But I'll keep in touch with you first.
Well, the reason I was asking is because I have court in Colorado on the 26th. Meg is my autism advocate. I'll send her your number, and hopefully, you guys might be able to coordinate something. I don't expect you to miss work to go to my court date. There's got to be some way that you can speak without being there, and she knows how to do that stuff. So,
I mean, honestly, generally, like when I had to deal with something like this, what was expected, at least as far as what was told by the lawyer, was that statement, and then, or is that like,
yes, sir.
I would have to send it through my email so that I can confirm that it comes from the person who.
Yes, sir. And a lot of that, there's a good possibility they'll do what they did with every other piece of information like that, and try to say that I probably made it up myself. They did that probably 24 times since Natalie was killed, if not more.
You know, there's a whole other thing. Instead of typing it up, actually writing it down on the page.
Yep, and the thing is, a lot of that paperwork that I have is me actually doing that. So, like you said, I probably already know. You're right, I do. Because of the term mentally ill, the rules are completely different. Because I was called mentally ill, they are entirely different. If somebody is considered schizophrenic, or they're trying to peg them as schizophrenic, and that person is abused, let's say they're raped or beaten up, they have to have somebody go in with them to make the police report. The police, some of them told me they're not even allowed to take a report from me unless somebody is present.
Well, I mean, as far as that, I mean, back to my work, I could probably, I mean, what time is your date?
It's at 1:30 in the afternoon. But Meg, my autism advocate, she knows how to do, because she has to do it from North Platte or possibly Lincoln, Nebraska. She's not going to be able to show up either, but she knows how to do the things so that she can appear in court, video court, and she might be able to help you with that if you have a few minutes.
Okay, so that all conversion therapy, which gives me a call.
Yes, sir.
Maybe like do it as far as like a third party information, like Facebook or something like that, so that at least there's actual face.
Yes, sir. That's a lot of the people that I went to for help. They were claiming didn't exist. Like, JoJo. They were claiming that she didn't exist, that I had manufactured her and made an artificial Joanna profile. Like, no, that didn't happen. And I tried getting a hold of Joanna to say, hey, this is what they're doing. But her and Derek were having some sort of fucked up issues. I don't know what the hell was going on. I just know that I was treated like shit for asking. And then there's also the popularity thing. Like, this has been a popularity contest from the beginning. Nobody wanted to look at evidence. They already had their narrative. They already had their culprit. They had already decided my guilt. I mean, there wasn't anything I could do about it short of someone showing up. And this whole time, they've used the mentally ill tag to get away with it. I'm autistic, not schizophrenic.
Right. As well. Okay, thanks.
Right. All right. All right. What's your number? And what was the other thing that I needed to ask him about that he was going to send me in texting? Does anybody on here remember? Oh my god, I got a fist like a racehorse. I'll be right back. His email address. All right. Now I gotta get a hold of my autism advocate. She got a hold of me while I was on the phone, so I do have to get a hold of her. All right. We're starting to get it coordinated. I guess I should read what people typed over here. Chris Newell typed, "Hope you're doing well. God bless." I'm not doing well. I'm actually offended. Not that you did anything wrong, but the God bless thing. I believe in the possibility of a God. I don't believe in the possibility of Jesus. I believe 100%, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that Jesus actually existed. Whether he was a human being or the one true Son of God makes no fucking difference to me. What makes a difference to me is how he treated other human beings. But I am of the firm belief that if you have to tell people you're Christian, you're probably not. It's like praying in public. If you are praying in public, that is not between you and God. Matter of fact, that breaks your covenant with God. Because now you're doing it for show. Like Tebow. Yeah. Between Tebow pretending and God for attention and Colin Kaepernick taking a knee for our rights as human beings. I got a lot of respect for Colin Kaepernick. I got zero respect for Tim Tebow. Zero. You're allowed to have your God, but I don't want your God or your Jesus in schools. We got too many people, too many so-called Christians killing other Christians over whether or not their Jesus is the real fucking Jesus. None of your Jesus is the real Jesus. Jesus is dead. Jesus fucking died. If you want to ask Jesus for a blanket, go ahead. Jesus ain't going to give you a blanket. Jesus, I think of him as a man for one simple reason. Because if I think of him as a God, I absolutely hate the son of a bitch. What kind of a loving God could watch while that shit happened to me growing up? Or happened to Natalie growing up? What kind of a God could look at this situation and not do something about it? I saved on average 11 lives per year while I was Starbucks Sean passing out blankets. 11 less people per year on average died in Boulder, Colorado in the homeless community. For 7 years. 7 years. When I'd pass out blankets to somebody who was freezing and it was snowing and it was a blizzard and it sucked, and I'd hand them a blanket and they'd say, "Thank God." Yeah, that's offensive to me. Because why? Because God would have let you fucking freeze to death. God would have watched you freeze to death. Jesus was a good man with some good lessons. I believe that if Jesus was actually the Son of God, that he would still be doing those things. He would still feed the hungry. He would still help the poor. He would still stick up for the prostitute. I'm not sure how much y'all know about Jewish law or the Great Temple of Solomon or the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount, that's what's left of the Great Temple of Jerusalem. Now, there was what's called the Women's Court. What's the Women's Court? Well, only men were allowed in the actual, I want to say it's the tabernacle. One guy I know, he calls it the tabernacle of the beast. The reason that he says that is because we really credit God with a lot of death and destruction. We really do paint God as Well, truly a world-class piece of shit. God is not painted in a good fucking light in the Bible. He's not. Look at the terrible shit that he does to human beings. If you do those things to just one human being, you get treated like a monster, but God does it to millions. And he is this great and wonderful loving God. God didn't pass out the blanket that saved your life. God wasn't there to give Benjamin Harvey a blanket on Christmas in 2017, my apologies. God wasn't there to do it. And because of the situation with Natalie, I wasn't there to do it either. Of course, that's not to say that if I gave him a blanket that he would have actually used it. You know why that is? Because any kind of shelter that you seek on a cold night when you're homeless is against the law. If you sleep under a bridge, it's urban camping. If you sleep under an awning, it's urban camping. If you sleep under a blanket, it's urban camping. But they can't charge you with urban camping if all you have on is your clothes. Ben Harvey froze to death 3 days before Natalie was shot in the head. Benjamin Harvey froze to death on Christmas. Just a couple of days prior, I think it might have been the day prior, I said, you know, somebody that I know is probably going to freeze to death tonight. Sure enough, Benjamin Harvey froze to death. There's got to be a way. There has to be a way. Now, I've had to deal with a lot of people who, like Mateo was saying, they just want to talk about themselves. It's difficult to get anything done when people are constantly talking about themselves. If you're going to help me, you need to pay attention to my situation, not keep reminiscing about your shit from the past. A lot of people say, you know, Sean, you shouldn't live in the past. But I'm not living in the past. I am living the consequences, the present consequences of evil things that people did in the past, things that can be rectified, but only if the American public actually gives a shit. You're allowed to believe in your God, just please don't bring it to my channel. If you're going to talk about God, don't. Show me your God. Show me. I don't mean bring your God down here and present him in front of me and say, see, God does exist. That's not what I'm asking for. Show me through your actions. Show me your God. If you're going to tell me you're Christian and you're going to show me something else, I don't give a fuck what you got to say. Plain and simple. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. But if you can't speak up, your God is fucking as fake as you are. If you can't speak up, you are a fake. And if you're a fake, obviously the God that you're pretending to believe in is just as fake. Anyway, I got to get a hold of Meg and try to get some stuff coordinated. Y'all be fucking safe. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Robert C. type, hope you'll get better, bro. That's going to take somebody actually speaking up in person. So we'll see what happens. I don't have much hope left, but I'm trying the best I can. That one, this one type, hey, Sean. Hey, that one, this one. Thank you for coming back to the channel. Y'all stay out of trouble or don't get caught. And if you're homeless, I'm sorry. There are 60 million black people in the United States of America. There are 60 million disabled people in the United States of America. Of the over 800 people killed by police last year, a little over 180 of them were black. over half of them were disabled. Now, given that there are 60 million of each, that really lets you know that black people aren't the most marginalized in the country. Those who are called disabled are. They're the easiest to victimize. Wait. That's not true either, is it? And why isn't it? Well, I'll tell you. Actually, I've probably said it about 1,000,000,000 times, so I don't really need to, do I? Y'all be safe, stay out of trouble, or don't get caught. God, this fucking sucks.